Shalom from Jerusalem. This is Israel at War, an update on day 601 of the war, which started on October the 7th, 2023, by the horrific attack and massacre by Hamas on the Israeli settlements and military outposts in Negev, the southern district of Israel. And today we are joined by three distinguished panelists, all the way from Washington, D.C., retired Brigadier General Mark Kimmett, formerly a senior U.S. Army officer, among other posts, held high positions at CENTCOM, at the Department of State, and the Office of the Secretary of Defense. General Kimmett, welcome.
Good morning.
In Israel, Reserve Colonel Reuven Ben Shalom of the Israeli Air Force and a cross-cultural strategist, Colonel Ben Shalom, welcome too.
Shalom, Amir.
And somewhere in Europe, between various way stations, Reserve Brigadier General Doron Gavish, formerly the commanding general of Israel's air and missile defense units, and currently on reserve duty, the commander of the Air and Missile Defense Task Force. And let me start with you, General Gavish, because yesterday it was officially made public, even though the fact itself was rumored earlier, that the Iron Beam, or in its Hebrew name, Shield of Light, laser system managed to intercept scores of drones and other vehicles, especially by Hamas, ever since last winter in the war. What can you tell us about the success of this system, which seems to be quite a pioneering achievement by the Israeli defense industry, the defense establishment, and of course, the soldiers in the field who make it all happen?
Well, indeed, Amir, you're right. This is something that was published yesterday. And, as it is during wars, although you have plans to do things in a certain pace, but you have to do it much more faster when you are during the war. You don't take the time to do some of the tests that you were planning to do, and you just bring the system into operational mode. By the way, I don't know if you remember, but the first deployment of the Iron Dome also was called the operational test, because back then when we deployed the system, we knew that in about a month we would probably find ourselves in a fight against the Hamas in Hezbollah, and we couldn't wait to deploy the system. And although we were in the mid of the integration system and the evaluation system, then we had to deploy the system. Plus minus, this is what happened here. In order to do whatever we can to deal with the UAV's threat, the decision was to deploy the system, although it was during its evaluation test. And indeed, it showed quite impressive success while intercepting a vast number of UAVs that were targeting Israel, some of them in a very short range. The Iron Beam would be developed and would be I would say the system's capabilities would be enlarged during the next coming months and years. But we see the beginning of it, and it is, as you really, I think you used the right term, it is a pioneered interceptions. First time in this war. We remember that we had first time interception in space, first time Aegis interception, first time US had interception, first time aero interception. So now we have also a laser interception. And for sure, this war would be written in the history of the world air and missile defense.
General Gavish, you mentioned Iron Dome, which was first used operationally when you were in charge of the air and missile units back in April of 2011. And we have all grown accustomed to look to Iron Dome for the major brunt of the defense. But is Iron Beam going to replace Iron Dome or only to supplement it?
It will take time until the laser would be the only system that is going to be used by the air defense. In general, we always prefer to have different systems, a variety of systems, a basket of capabilities, as we call it. Then you decide with which one of your capabilities you want to intercept the target, because sometimes there are advantages to the laser, and we would see it also in the future. Sometimes there would be advantages to the laser system, sometimes to the kinetic interceptions one, sometimes to the EW. So you really want to enlarge your basket of opportunities, and this is what we see now with the laser. And of course, this is super important for the defense of Israel.
General Kimmit, in your own nation, your own Department of Defense, the new thing is the Golden Dome of America, which is, of course, intended to intercept much more complex incoming projectiles. But do you think that this new laser system, Iron Beam, could be combined with US-produced systems in order to...
Oh, I think so. First of all, I'd like to congratulate Israel for the development of the Iron Beam. I have been saying over the past 3 years of the war in Ukraine that while it's nice to see what drones are doing, it is not revolutionary. Sooner or later, there will be a counter-drone capability, and most of the testing up to this point has been marginal at best. And candidly, if the Iron Beam can do what it says it can do, repeatedly and at scale, it just kind of completely takes the drone back into the notion of a typical battlefield tool that is not impervious and can't be shot down. The problem, of course, of the United States and an Iron Beam type of system, which we've looked at before, primarily in our space-based systems, is number one, the scale of the United States, the size of the United States, and number two, the power requirements to be able to protect the entire country with a Iron Beam type of configuration. I think it could be done, and General Gavish is exactly right. It can't be seen as a standalone system that replaces, but it is a system that makes other systems not necessarily redundant, but it's better to have 3 or 4 different systems that the enemy has to defeat, not just one.
Colonel Ben Shalom, as General Kimmit remarked, there is a continuous cycle of offense versus defense, various systems coming into the battlefield, and then obviously such as if it is one of Newton's laws, there is an anti-system. Now, you're a veteran pilot, and such systems, Iron Beam or other laser systems, would probably be quite dangerous, especially to low-flying and slow-flying manned aircraft, such as helicopters or transports. Is there going to be a response to the response to the response, and so on and so forth?
Well, first, absolutely. That's the nature of warfare. It's always evolving. You're always trying to be one step ahead. And Israel's DNA is always to be in the cutting edge. I also want to remind everybody that our collaboration with the United States, although we always say it's based on values and interests, etc., every professional in the U.S. administration will tell you that this collaboration benefits the United States and our mutual R&D, and it's vital to our national security. So this is something very important that we're doing together. Yeah, you mentioned that I was a pilot, so this is another point in time to mention that my profession is soon obsolete. There's absolutely no need to babysit these machines. Robots can do the work alone. We don't need brave pilots to fly all the way to Yemen. Soon we will just press a button and these machines will operate alone. Another thing I want to mention is that after October 7th, we may have jumped to a conclusion that technology failed us because some technologies did fail us, or maybe we were over-reliant on some technologies, yet we can't make that mistake. We are a type of nation that always relies on technology. We will always push technology forward. So also moving into the future, we cannot make that assumption and think that we're only going to beat wars with tanks and boots on the ground. It will be technology. And this technology is with leaps and bounds going forward. And what we see now with the laser is just one example. The last point I want to make is that we see from this war the devastating effects of the old type of warfare. And I hope we will be able to push to a kind of warfare where we can more take out the enemy pinpoint, less suffering for civilians, because that's always something we're trying to do. And also there's the economic aspect, because shooting down missiles in space costs a lot of money. And this laser is much, much more cheap than shooting pieces of metal into the air.
General Gavish, the major news of the day in Israel, aside from the Iron Beam success, is the continuous effort to find a solution, to find some formula which will enable the release of at least 10 out of the 20 hostages, Israeli hostages who are alive, and to retrieve at least some of the bodies of the 38 hostages who are kept by Hamas, even though they were killed long ago. Do you believe that such a formula, which is being negotiated by mediators such as Qatar and Egypt, and the American delegation headed by presidential envoy Steve Witkoff, do you believe that there can be a meeting of the minds when Hamas keeps saying that there is a non-negotiable condition that the war be declared over and that Israel withdraws from Gaza before it releases what it sees as its human insurance policy, the hostages? Is it possible?
Well, let's start from the end of your question. Yes, I think it is possible. It is quite easy. The Hamas have to agree with what Israel is saying. By the way, not only Israel, also the United States and also the countries around us, which means that is stopping the war, putting down his weapons. His leaders would go out of the Gaza Strip and ruling the ones that would be ruling the Gaza Strip won't be the Hamas. If the Hamas is willing to do it, Israel for sure is willing to stop the war. And this is what it was stated also by Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu. So everyone understands that it can be done. So the ball is really on the hands of the Hamas. We heard it, by the way, also from the current, from the previous US administration, and we hear it now, that the Hamas is the one who is continuously putting obstacles into the wheel of negotiation, let's put it this way, or wagon of negotiations, the Witkoff agreement, or the idea to come to a point that some of the Israelis would be back. This is something that was put in on the table a few months ago, now again, and Israel agreed to it. So it is really, I think, the situation where we are, it is really, unfortunately, in the end of the Hamas, and the Hamas have to choose between all what we've talked until now to the other way, which is being continuously under attack. This is the other option that Israel now is also promoting, and this way we hope that the Hamas will understand that he have a carrot, there is a carrot and there is a hammer, and it is for him to decide what he wants to do. And very unfortunate, the ones that are really suffering are the Palestinians resident of the Gaza Strip. And I think that deep in their heart, they understand who is the one to blame for it.
Well, you describe it in very detached terms, as if we are sitting around the table, I was going to say at the Harvard Business School or School of Government, but Harvard is now so controversial that let's talk about the US Army War College. But there is also the emotional dimension, and there are segments in the Israeli society, obviously the families of the hostages, who believe that 601 days, that's a very long time to wait for Hamas to change its position.
I think that all of us, this is what we believe, and this is why Israel decided to intense the pressure. Unfortunately, we are in a situation that we have to choose between bad alternatives, and this is sometimes the situation that you are when you are fighting a terrorist organization within a war. But if there is something that I really want to believe, that the vast majority of Israelis, the government, and of course the defense establishment wants, is those hostages back in Israel, live, and the ones that we have to bring to bear it.
General Kimmit, for us Israelis, the Gaza war is, of course, the major item on everyone's minds. But when you gauge the mood in Washington, there are so many other problems, domestic and foreign. And on President Trump's plate, there are at least 3 issues, of which Gaza is only one: the Iran negotiations and the Russia-Ukraine war. If you look at it as part of a broad picture, how important, how urgent do you think Gaza, the Gaza war, the ceasefire talks, how important, how crucial is that to decision makers in Washington?
Well, I'd have to be candid that it's fairly low. If you take a look at that plate of all the issues that President Trump has to focus on every day, about 65 to 70% of that plate is domestic in nature, or tariffs, international trade in nature. So that means there's only about 35% left for him to focus upon. I would say that the Iranian talks, Gaza, and Russia, Ukraine probably are all about the same, probably about 10%, and they've got some left over for China and other crises around the world. But I don't believe that any more than 10% of the effort of the U.S. government right now is focused on the Gaza issue. It's tragic. It's unfortunate. We appreciate everything that Witkoff is doing with and for the situation. But if it is certainly not an issue that President Trump, or candidly for the State Department, wakes up every morning and says, we've got to get this fixed.
Well, 10%, but if the president gets 100% in victory, glory, whatever you want to call it, that would be quite an achievement for him.
He likes achievements. He likes to make deals. He likes to take credit for those deals. So just because, America is a very powerful country. 10% is still a heck of a lot of power being applied to it, but it's just only about 1/10 of the total power of the United States.
Reuven Ben Shalom, Mark Kimmit mentioned, and Doron, the plight of the population in Gaza. In recent days, more and more humanitarian aid has been delivered to the population. Apparently, their resentment of Hamas is now finding some expression. Do you think that this aspect of the Israeli operation, the civil one, the humanitarian one, is shortening the war?
Well, I wouldn't say that it's shortening the war. I would say that it's an integral part of the war. You can't fight a democracy, can't fight a war without having the humanitarian component. We abide by the international humanitarian law. We've done so throughout the war, supplying Gaza with a lot of food and assistance and medications and field hospitals, etc. Unfortunately, the mechanism that we chose was mistaken, and we enabled Hamas to take most of that equipment and store it in their warehouses. Therefore, there was no starvation or no famine throughout the war, and we had to stave off these ridiculous accusations throughout the war. And it led us to the point in time now where even 2 months without his assistance going in, they had so much that they didn't reach the red line yet. What we have now is a positive mechanism that was stood up, very well planned, or the best that can be planned in these circumstances. We saw this week an instance where we thought that we're losing control, but no, it still is operational and feeding more than 1 million meals a day to the Gazans. I just think it's an integral part. And maybe to answer directly your question, the first time that Hamas understands that they're losing their grip on the population because they are not the ones that are supplying the food or boosting up the prices or utilizing it as a tool against their own people, because now we're giving the food directly. So perhaps this is just one more element towards the point where Hamas are actually no longer in control. Remember that that's a goal of the war. We wanted to eliminate Hamas militarily and governmentally, and this is probably one of the issues to look at. The last thing I would recommend, and we can't get into it now, is look at the declaration by Israel's ministers. It's not always what the IDF does and what is declared, but declarations of ministers and where they're moving forward with their vision of Gaza, with Trump's plan of evacuating Gaza. It's very complex, very sensitive. Some of it is troubling, and maybe we have to dedicate another program just for that issue in itself, Amir.
Doron, we know that you must catch a flight very soon. If you vanish from our screens, we'll understand that you were plucked by a flight attendant or a pilot, whatever the case may be. But give us a minute regarding a relative success story in this war. What is happening on the Lebanese front? It's been 6 months since the 1 month ceasefire was brokered. It is going on. And yesterday, the Northern Command of Israel has released the reserve division, which divided the responsibility for the border with the regular one in charge of guarding the border, which means that the burden is lighter than it used to be, and that Israel can take some risks, because apparently the Lebanese army under the new president, retired General Joseph Aoun, has been quietly disarming Hezbollah, in addition, of course, to the Israeli strikes against Hezbollah. So is this really a success story?
Well, first of all, Amir, thank you for your understanding. I will have to go right after I finish my answer. Going back to your question, I think that, time will tell. The real success is that the Israelis that lived in the northern part of Israel will be back to their homes, and the northern part of Israel would continue or would once again will flourish. Then I think we could say that we have a success. But for sure, we are in our way toward success from a military point of view. For sure, it is a success. Also from our defense strategy, it is a success. When we're looking at Lebanon, we have to remember we always talked about the fourth pillar of how Israel is defending against rockets and missiles. All of them worked. We saw attack operations in the first 48 hours when Israel decided to be in a full-scale war with Lebanon. Basically, the Israeli Air Force eliminated up to 70% of the capabilities that the Hezbollah had. Then a quite, I would say, a significant defense, because still they were doing what they were trying to do. And of course, a very, as we all remember, a very innovative way of fighting against the Hezbollah with beepers and all those things. So overall, from a military point of view, of course, it worked, and the military strategy. The other thing we should say, and here I really would like to be optimistic. I remember Colonel Ben Shalom talking about it in previous shows. I want to be optimistic because we see that there is a new government in Lebanon. We see that they are really trying to enforce their power within Lebanon. It is not so easy for them, but this is where they are going. The Hezbollah is weak. The Hezbollah is being blocked from the east with the El Julani government that is being over there now. Of course, Israel is continuously trying to enforce, and this is what we're doing, the agreement that we have there. So I think everything together would bring us to the success, but I will finish when I started. The real success would be when all the Israelis would go back to their home in the northern part of Israel, and the northern part of Israel would back be flourishing.
So thank you very much, General Gavish. Godspeed. Have a comfortable flight and a safe landing. And to our grounded colleagues, General Kimmit and Colonel Ben Shalom, thank you too. We will be back very soon with another update of Israel at War. This has been Israel at War from TV7 News. I'm Amir Oren, sitting in for Jonathan Hessend. For the time being, Shalom from Jerusalem.
My name is Eran Lehrman. I used to be Deputy National Security Advisor to the Government of Israel, currently Vice President of the Jerusalem Institute for Strategy and Security, a think tank, and the editor of the Jerusalem Strategic Tribune. For the last few years, I've been a regular panelist for TV7, a fantastic opportunity to bring deep and analytical perspectives to the debate over regional affairs, Israeli affairs, international affairs, in the company of some of the best minds in Israel.
For more of TV7's productions and editorials, we invite you to visit our website at www.tv7israelnews.com.